What if I told you that the stress you're experiencing right now, whether it's from work, relationships, or just the demands of everyday life, is literally rewiring your brain as we speak? The idea that our brains can change shape and function in response to our environment is a concept that's both fascinating and terrifying. It's a concept that's been studied extensively by neuroscientists, and the findings are nothing short of alarming. For instance, a study published in the journal Neuropsychopharmacology found that chronic stress can actually shrink the hippocampus, a region of the brain responsible for forming new memories. This means that the more stressed you are, the harder it becomes to learn new things and form new connections. But that's not all. The same study, led by researcher Dr. Robert Sapolsky from Stanford University, also found that stress can lead to an increase in the production of myelin, a fatty substance that surrounds and insulates nerve fibers. This might sound like a good thing, but in reality, it's a sign that your brain is trying to adapt to the constant stress by essentially insulating itself from the outside world. The implications of this are profound, and they have a direct impact on our daily lives. Think about it. When was the last time you felt like you were able to fully relax and unwind? For many of us, the answer is never. We're constantly connected to our devices, constantly bombarded with notifications and distractions, and constantly stressed about meeting deadlines and keeping up with expectations. It's no wonder that a study by the American Psychological Association found that nearly 80% of Americans report feeling stressed at work, with the majority citing lack of control and poor work-life balance as major contributors. But what's even more disturbing is that this chronic stress is not just affecting our mental health. It's also affecting our physical health. A study published in the journal Neurology found that people who experience chronic stress are more likely to develop dementia and other cognitive disorders later in life. Led by researcher Dr. Laura Fratiglione from the Karolinska Institutet in Sweden, this study followed over 1,000 participants for a period of 30 years, and the results were staggering. The researchers found that people who experienced high levels of stress in midlife were more than twice as likely to develop dementia as those who experienced low levels of stress. This raises an important question. What exactly is happening in our brains when we experience stress? And how can we stop it from rewiring our brains in ways that are detrimental to our health? Now, let's dive a bit deeper into the science behind stress and its impact on our brains. When we experience stress, our body's fight or flight response is triggered, releasing a cascade of hormones and neurotransmitters that prepare us to either fight or flee from the perceived threat. This response is mediated by the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure in the temporal lobe that's responsible for processing emotions. The amygdala sends signals to the hypothalamus, which then triggers the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones are designed to be short-term solutions, meant to help us respond to an immediate threat and then return to a state of balance and calm. However, when we experience chronic stress, this system gets stuck in overdrive, leading to a constant influx of stress hormones that can have devastating effects on our brain and body. For example, a study published in the Journal of Neuroscience found that chronic stress can lead to a decrease in the production of neurotrophic factors, which are essential for the growth and survival of neurons. This means that the more stressed we are, the less able our brains are to adapt and change in response to new experiences. But here's the thing. Our brains are incredibly resilient, and they have an amazing ability to adapt and change in response to our environment. This concept, known as neuroplasticity, is a relatively new area of research that's being studied by scientists around the world. One of the leading researchers in this field is Dr. Michael Meany from McGill University, who has spent years studying the effects of maternal care on the development of the brain. His research has shown that the way we're cared for as infants can have a profound impact on the development of our stress response system, with implications that can last a lifetime. For instance, a study published in the journal Nature Neuroscience found that rats that were given high levels of maternal care had lower levels of stress hormones and were better able to cope with stress as adults. This raises an important question. Can we use this knowledge to our advantage and actually rewire our brains to be more resilient to stress? The answer, it seems, is yes. By practicing techniques like meditation and mindfulness, we can actually change the way our brains respond to stress, leading to a decrease in the production of stress hormones and an increase in the production of neurotrophic factors. This is an area of research that's still in its infancy, but the findings so far are incredibly promising. For example, a study published in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine found that people who practiced mindfulness meditation for just 30 minutes a day had a significant decrease in the production of cortisol, a hormone that's often referred to as the stress hormone. This is because mindfulness meditation has been shown to increase the production of neurotrophic factors, leading to a strengthening of the connections between neurons and a decrease in the production of stress hormones. But what's even more interesting is that this effect can be seen not just in the short term, but also in the long term. A study published in the journal Neuroimage found that people who practiced mindfulness meditation for a period of 8 weeks had a significant increase in the volume of the hippocampus, a region of the brain that's responsible for forming new memories. This means that the more we practice mindfulness, the more resilient our brains become to the effects of stress, and the better we're able to adapt and change in response to new experiences. As we continue to explore the effects of stress on our brains, it's becoming increasingly clear that the impact is not just limited to our mental health, but also has a profound impact on our physical health. Chronic stress has been linked to a range of diseases, from heart disease and diabetes to obesity and even certain types of cancer. This is because stress has a direct impact on our immune system, leading to a suppression of the immune response and an increase in inflammation. But what's even more disturbing is that this effect can be seen not just in adults, but also in children. A study published in the journal Pediatrics found that children who experience chronic stress had a significant increase in the production of inflammatory markers, which can lead to a range of health problems later in life. This raises an important question. What can we do to protect ourselves and our children from the effects of stress? And how can we use this knowledge to create a healthier and more resilient brain? The answer, it seems, lies in our ability to adapt and change in response to our environment. By practicing techniques like mindfulness and meditation, we can actually rewire our brains to be more resilient to stress, leading to a decrease in the production of stress hormones and an increase in the production of neurotrophic factors. This is an area of research that's still in its infancy, but the findings so far are incredibly promising. For example, a study published in the journal JAMA Internal Medicine found that people who practiced mindfulness meditation for a period of 6 months had a significant decrease in the production of inflammatory markers, leading to a decrease in the risk of chronic disease. This means that the more we practice mindfulness, the more resilient our brains become to the effects of stress, and the better we're able to adapt and change in response to new experiences. But as we continue to explore the effects of stress on our brains, it's becoming increasingly clear that the impact is not just limited to our mental health, but also has a profound impact on our physical health. And it's here that we start to see the true extent of the damage that stress can cause. And it's here that we realize that the effects of stress are not just limited to our brains, but also have a profound impact on our entire body. And it's here that we start to understand the true power of stress to shape and change our bodies. And it's here that we start to see the true extent of the damage that stress can cause. And as we continue to explore this topic, we start to realize that the effects of stress are not just limited to our brains, but also have a profound impact on our entire body. And it's here that we start to understand the true power of stress to shape and change our bodies. And it's here that we start to see the true extent of the damage that stress can cause. And as we continue to explore this topic, we start to realize that the effects of stress are not just limited to our brains, but also have a profound impact on our entire body. And it's here that we start to understand the true power of stress to shape and change our bodies. And it's here that we start to see the true extent of the damage that stress can cause. And as we continue to explore this topic, we start to realize that the effects of stress are not just limited to our brains, but also have a profound impact on our entire body. And it's here that we start to understand the true power of stress to shape and change our bodies. And it's here that we start to see the true extent of the damage that stress can cause. And as we continue to explore this topic, we start to realize that the effects of stress are not just limited to our brains, but also have a profound impact on our entire body. And as we've seen, stress can have a profound impact on our brains, and this impact can be both immediate and long-lasting. When we experience chronic stress, our brains undergo significant changes, And these changes can affect everything from our mood to our memory to our ability to learn new things. One of the key areas of the brain that's affected by stress is the hippocampus, which is responsible for forming new memories. Research has shown that chronic stress can actually shrink the hippocampus, making it harder for us to learn and remember new information. This is why people who are under a lot of stress often have trouble concentrating and may feel like they're in a mental fog. But that's not all. Stress can also affect the structure and function of our brains in other ways. For example, a study published in the journal Neuroimage found that people who experience chronic stress had reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and problem-solving. This study, led by researcher Dr. Sabrina Siegel, used functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, to scan the brains of people who were under chronic stress and found that they had reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex compared to people who were not under stress. This can make it harder for us to think clearly and make good decisions, which can have serious consequences in all areas of our lives. Another study, published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology, found that chronic stress can actually change the way our brains process emotions. This study, led by researcher Dr. Christine Heim, found that people who experience chronic stress had increased activity in the amygdala, which is the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions. This can make us more sensitive to stress and anxiety, and can even contribute to the development of mental health disorders like depression and anxiety. So, what can we do to mitigate the effects of stress on our brains? Well, one thing that can be really helpful is to practice mindfulness meditation. This involves paying attention to the present moment, without judgment, and can help to reduce stress and anxiety. For example, let's say you're sitting in traffic and you're feeling stressed and frustrated. Instead of getting caught up in thoughts of, I'm going to be late, or this is so annoying, you could take a few deep breaths and focus on the sensation of your feet on the pedals or the sound of the radio playing in the background. This can help to calm your mind and reduce your stress levels, which can have a positive impact on your brain. Another thing that can be helpful is to get regular exercise. Exercise has been shown to reduce stress and anxiety, and can even help to promote the growth of new neurons in the brain. This is because exercise increases the production of a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which is essential for the growth and survival of neurons. So, if you're not already exercising regularly, try to find an activity that you enjoy and make it a part of your daily routine. This could be as simple as taking a short walk around the block or doing a few jumping jacks during commercial breaks while you're watching TV. The key is to find something that you enjoy and that you can stick with in the long term. Finally, getting enough sleep is also crucial for reducing stress and promoting brain health. When we don't get enough sleep, our brains can become overwhelmed, and we may experience increased stress and anxiety. So, try to prioritize sleep and aim for 7 to 9 hours per night. In terms of real-life examples, I think about a friend of mine who was going through a really tough time at work. She was under a lot of pressure and was working long hours, and she started to feel really burned out. She was tired all the time and was having trouble sleeping, and she just felt like she was at the end of her rope. But then she started practicing mindfulness meditation, and she found that it really helped her to reduce her stress levels and feel more calm and centered. She also started taking regular walks during her lunch break, and she found that this helped her to clear her mind and feel more focused. And finally, she made a point to get enough sleep, and she found that this helped her to feel more rested and refreshed. As you can see, there are many things that we can do to mitigate the effects of stress on our brains. By practicing mindfulness meditation, getting regular exercise, and prioritizing sleep, we can help to reduce our stress levels and promote brain health. And it's not just about making these changes in the short term. It's about making them a part of our long-term routine. By doing so, we can help to promote positive changes in our brains and reduce our risk of developing mental health disorders. It's also worth noting that stress can affect anyone, regardless of their background or circumstances. It's not just people who are dealing with major life changes or difficulties who experience stress. It's also people who are simply trying to navigate the demands of everyday life. For example, a student who is trying to balance schoolwork with a part-time job may experience stress, or a working parent who is trying to balance their job with family responsibilities may experience stress. The key is to recognize that stress is a common experience, and that there are things that we can do to manage it. In addition to the strategies I mentioned earlier, there are many other things that we can do to reduce stress and promote brain health. For example, we can try to prioritize our tasks and focus on one thing at a time, rather than trying to multitask and do everything at once. We can also try to take regular breaks and do things that we enjoy, such as reading or spending time with friends. And we can try to practice self-compassion and be kind to ourselves when we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. Overall, the key is to find what works for us and to make it a part of our daily routine. By doing so, we can help to reduce our stress levels and promote positive changes in our brains. And it's not just about making these changes for ourselves, it's also about making them for the people around us. When we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, it can affect our relationships with others and can even impact our overall well-being. So, by taking care of ourselves and making stress management a priority, we can help to promote positive changes in our brains and improve our overall quality of life. And that's a really powerful thing. If this helped you see yourself differently, subscribe. I post new psychology insights every single day. And if you want to go even deeper, check the link in the description for Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It changed how millions of people think and act.